Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tapas Talkies. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest for today, Fatema Agarkar. Fatima has been an edu leader for the last decade, and she has been the founder of three startups. She is a fantastic speaker and orator. She has conducted several trainings, and she is in the who's who list of people in the education sector. Fatima is the founder of Agarkar Center for Excellence, and she was the co founder of KA Edu Associates. She is skilled in management, leadership development, business development, marketing strategy, and business strategy. She is also the territory head for Mumbai for the APA, that is Association for Primary Education and Research. So, welcome, Fatima. It's a pleasure to have you on Tapas Talkies.
Thank you, Preeti. I think you've been extremely generous and very kind with your words. I've enjoyed my conversation when I met you the first time, and I think we connected in a lot of things. Both are very passionate about education, about children. I think we both have, boys in the same age group. So there's a lot of mommy talk as well. And I think we've enjoyed what we've experienced in the last, 10 years as entrepreneurs ourselves. So excited to be in conversation with you.
Fantastic. So great to have you on the show. Like you said, so many conversations that we've had, and each time it strikes me as to how level headed and how you have the right pulse of whatever is happening across the education spectrum. And so it's fantastic to get your thoughts on a lot of things. The first thing I think is the elephant in the room. It's about education industry. In the last year, we have gone through a sea change, I feel, in the way we are presently educating our children. So, what do you feel are some of the lessons from last year that the industry should take away?
Thank you. You say that, and thank you for calling us an industry because Hindustan Times actually published all the sectors and all the industries that have been most hit by the pandemic. And education continues to be the top five employer in the country. We have no mention as a sector, and I think if we start thinking of it as a sector, we'll start professionalizing and we'll start putting a lot of accountability. So I think the last year, Preeti, has been a year of extreme reflection. And I'm going to answer it in three buckets. I'm going to talk about the owners, the managers, people who set up schools, private or public, and the school leadership. For them, it's a moment of complete reflection on how they've been communicating with their parent body. Those schools that were transparent, were efficient with their communication, engaged with dialogue, constantly handheld the parents, have had no problem. Right. Those that perhaps kept them at arm's length because, we have some colonized version of how it should be, that baggage continues, have been caught out. So I think the whole communication aspect has to be corporatized. And I think that's one big takeaway, that educators, you cannot shy away from communication. Good ones, in terms of good conversations, fun conversations where people are praising you, but also the ones which make you reflect and rethink strategies. This is not a battle that you're going to win alone. The next 15 to 18 months will test you, but I'm thinking the next 10 years are going to test you. So unless educators are willing to engage in a partnership with parents, this is going to be an uphill street. So that's the big takeaway for educators. For parents, a big one, because suddenly those marks don't seem important enough. Suddenly you start reflecting on what you should have actually done and not outsourced it. And I'm not saying all parents, but I know a lot of parents struggled initially. It was overwhelming. Household work, work from home, children, online education. It just seemed like you were in a cave. Imagine if you had thought about streamlining a bit of that earlier on, where instead of parking them into one class, from one class to another, to another, to another, I don't know what sort of head start people are trying to achieve. I mean, when parents ask me what classes your son goes to, I said, nothing. He comes back from school and he's chilling because I want him to have that downtime. No, but what about college applications? He's in grade 9. What about this? What about that? I said, he's in grade 9. He's not in grade 10. Let him still live. So I think parents, a moment of reflection for them as well to say, what's really important? Is learning going to be important, or are the grades going to be important? Your grade may still say B, but your child is discussing politics, is talking about science, is talking about research, is telling you how Bitcoin might actually change the way economies are run. That's not going to come in your question paper. So he's never going to resit. What is it that you're looking for? You can't have both. So parents have had a lot of reflection to do, and I think that's my big takeaway, that there has been a mindset change, refreshing Preeti. I know you and I feel excited about this, but it's happening in a way that should have happened pre-pandemic as well. And the last bit is the teachers. So, big onus on the teachers, lots of fatigue for them. They've had to shift gears. Preeti, I'm going to sheepishly say this in the education space. In all the conferences, we spoke about a volatile world. We spoke about, technology overcoming us and all of that. Yet there was no capacity built. Teachers were not trained. Teachers resisted technology. I know teachers who would still do lesson plans on paper, and all the changes meant they had to make that effort to rewrite. Suddenly, Google Sheets are working beautifully. It was that mindset change that when you didn't have a choice, you embraced it. I wish it had been done pre pandemic because it could have been a bit more seamless for a lot of the teachers. All in all, the big takeaways are communicate, engage, partnerships. Let's lower certain expectations as parents. And then, you know what? It'll change the way the teachers teach as well. Because the expectation is an optimization of marks, there is that tendency then to optimize marks. I mean, come on. We're living in a very realistic environment. As a mom, I never look at the mark sheet, but I'm probably in the minority like you, Preeti. I know everyone's first thing they do is open that, that whatever login they have these days with schools. First thing they'll look at is the grade book. How does that grade book tell you where your child is? So lots of mindset changes. I just hope, Preeti, that with the schools opening and us being in the physical world, these lessons are not forgotten. It's not a bad dream. It's actually a very good reflection point. These are the changes we needed, because if 18 million kids are getting out there in industry, Preeti, every year, they're going, sorry, so 18 million people are getting into industry year on year. These children need skills, not knowledge alone. And that's something to reflect on because uh, we're not McDonald's. Our children are not McDonald's burger, on that product line. One burger, every burger is the same. Even the lettuce angle is the same because that's the way the machine is put it. You know what? I like my gourmet burger. I like my burger done in a different way because that's the beauty of of eating a meal. And think about children being different, and thank God for the difference, because that actually brings out innovation, creation. They question more, they'll change, they'll rewrite rules of the game. Maybe my son actually asked me this yesterday very earnestly. He said, if we have this population problem, okay, in this country, and for years and years we're talking about it, and he said people in high-rise buildings will never really understand what the levels are at that level. And today, when you look at the kind of opinionated expressions on social media, they're coming from a place of illiteracy, or they, someone's brainwashing them, right? It cannot be that people think like that. And he said, so when does that cycle break? How come the government doesn't do enough to control the population? And I was thinking, you know what, he's still not done his bio homework. It's due tomorrow. But in that conversation with him, Preeti, I just realized it's okay if he doesn't do the bio homework. I want to listen to what he's thinking. He has research. He said, look at what Singapore did. They had the one child policy and they were awarding people who controlled. He said, maybe the government can come out with different layers. People who are qualified, who can afford to have two children, can look after the children, should be allowed to. But those who are in a financial strife should think about family planning. I was like, wow. I mean, if that is what a 15-year-old is thinking, we need more of those 15-year-olds. And that child is not getting an A plus on that bio paper. I'm telling
Wow, wow. I think I have so many excerpts from just that one answer that can go. Oh my God, that's just brilliant, Fatima. And I think you encapsulated the problem and the solution for the industry in
you.
just that one answer. Um, so many things that really struck me is first thing was about the open communication between schools and the parents. And you're right, it's not just about during this pandemic, but any schools that have followed open communication and transparency, I believe, are at a much better position because there is the trust that the parents have placed in them. So, whether it's about collection of the fees, I believe that the parents who had a problem in terms of disclosed communication are the ones raising their voice. So, you're perfectly spot on in terms of talking about the communication part of it.
And Preeti, I did not talk about the macro bit, which was a big takeaway. Finally, we're talking about public-private partnership in a lot more uh, open manner. We are actually saying, why can't private education be profitable?
Right.
It's like the hospital industry. I mean, just because it's profitable doesn't mean someone's taking away something. I mean, right to education is a fundamental right, but if you want infrastructure, if you want facilities, if you want that caliber of teacher, if you want that quality program, it comes at a price. Someone's putting a lot of effort and a lot of funds to be able to create that. I simply give the example of the private and the public hospitals. Why are people still going to the private hospitals? Because you're assured of a certain quality. You're willing to pay.
Exactly.
Then why are you penalizing the private sector because they charge that fee? They didn't hold a gun. You demanded that admission. You worked for that admission. I know how many hours parents have spent to get that. Now that they have it, that's not good enough, and they're making money. This kind of negativity actually affected the children. Then managements were taking kids out of class, and we messed it up. If the communication was fair, to say, this is what I have spent. I've had friends who've told me, yeah, but kids have not gone to school, so 50% तो बनता ही है. I said, कैसे बनता है? आप रेस्टोरेंट में जाते हो, फुल प्राइस पे करते हो, टेक अवे के लिए भी फुल प्राइस पे करते हो, वहां तो एसी नहीं होता है. I mean, these are educated people who are thinking like that. And if the dialogue is clear, crystal clear, this is my expenditure, this is where I'm spending my money, this is what I need to build a corpus for because I have those plans, I think any level-headed individual will understand. But I don't think those conversations had happened so transparently before.
Right, and so I think that's where the parents need to be educated about conscious capitalism. It's not bad to be capitalist. It's about being conscious. It's about whether I'm going to work in a space tomorrow or create an organization tomorrow which will build the community, or is it going to result in harm to the community? And these are the conversations that have to start, like what your son was speaking about at 15 years. And the clarity is mind boggling what he's talking about. So he's thinking about solving the problems that are facing, that he's looking at around him. And that, I think, is the best way to bring up children. I also like what you spoke about the parents, right? Where you said that parents have suddenly woken up and they're seeing a different side to their children also. In fact, probably they had not seen that side of learning. um, and especially about the grade cards, and then the other word that is used is report cards, right? So I don't know what is there to report about. I mean, the child hasn't done any mistakes, or there's no crime to report, right? So I abhor the idea of report cards and grade cards. And at Tapas we have gone into formative assessments up to grade 7, so you'll be happy to know that uh, her formative assessments are built into the lesson plans itself. So while the child is
Wow.
playing, while the child is answering to the whatever is the exit slip that is planned for the day, the child is giving out how much they have understood about the particular concept, about that period of the day, etc. So there is absolutely no stress, and this I see has to be a systemic change, like you perfectly pointed out. Unless this focus on marks and grades comes down, the pressure on the teacher will not come down, and hence it's completely cyclical, right? So the teacher continues to push the child where it's not necessary, and just so that the parents can be pleased. So perfectly said. I think so many points that we again resonate on, so thank you so much for that insight. um, you've been interacting with teachers over so many years, training them, upskilling teachers. So, especially in this period of time, what do you think are the top three skills that teachers should have coming out of the pandemic to survive, and just skills that are good to have for the teachers?
Um, you know, okay, this is very personal. This is my own reflection, not just what I think the industry is putting out there in terms of top three skills. For me personally, I don't find teachers reading enough, doing their own research. Preeti, it is very important to analyze the journey of people, professionals in the corporate world as well. uh, you do not wait for teacher training workshops. You skill yourself. It's self initiated. And a lot of that has to do with you reading, having conversations, opening out, cross industry referencing. You evolve. I think our teachers need that ability now, the skill development to say, I'm going to, I've analyzed where my weakness is. I'm going to improve on it. Let me just read this up. Let me do it. I'm not waiting for an external factor. I feel that is a key skill. It has to be self initiated. So for me, that's very important. The research skills are not as defined as I would like it. We are the educators. It's almost like I wake up an hour early just so that I pick up on all the relevant articles, whether it's through LinkedIn or all the groups that I'm part of. I want to keep abreast of what are the new thoughts that are coming out. We don't have teachers doing enough of it. It's almost mechanical. I have to, this is my lesson plan, I'm going to go in and teach. But look at the world news today. The situation has changed. There's a cyclone, or there's an issue in Madhya Pradesh. Bring that out into your conversation. You can't if you don't read. So big part. And you know what, teachers should be reading. So when you're dishing it out to the kids to say, pick up on those skills, have you done that? And today, thanks to technology, sorry, it's non-negotiable. I cannot believe that you cannot dedicate 30 minutes of your day to read up. And LinkedIn's a great one to, if teachers are listening, great opportunity. It's all curated. You don't even have to make the effort of researching. If you follow the right groups, you'll be updated. But make the effort. That self-initiation and research skill is critical. Technology is non-negotiable, so I'm not even going to get into that. Those teachers that are not going to use gamification, that are not going to make it more fun, more engaging, more polls. It's painful, Preeti. The child has done the entire assignment, and the teacher has sent it back and saying, no, that's not what I wanted. So then use real time engagement, right? Today, thanks to Google Sheets and tasks, it's so easy. You're seeing the child is making the mistake. Nip it in, have office hours, dedicate time. This is not to test a child's memory, right? This is to motivate the child to think, to create. You can only do that if you don't make it a painful list. So gamification, polls, using technology to intervene at the right time to create that differentiation, very important. And the third skill is stop being teachers. Stop putting that information down. Start becoming partners. Start thinking of this as a relationship, which also gets you to learn, especially for the middle and high school. It's still more directional based when it's pre-primary and elementary years. So depending on the cohort that you work with, you also have to change your strategies. That means you're going to have to start thinking round the clock. um, can I add the fourth skill? Because this is Fatima. She'll always put in the fourth one as well. Um, I just feel they need to communicate with more clarity with what their expectations are of children. Through the audits that I've done this year, the teacher wants this, the child has done this, the expectation of the board is something else. It's all a bit of a mess. And in that, the child has landed up shafted because it's, I beg your pardon, because it's online. It's not face to face. So please understand, without clarity, without direction, without exemplars, without giving them, uh, some sort of framework to work with, you've left them alone, and then you're penalizing them for not having done what you wanted to. So I feel that these are things that can be done, implement, and you think, Preeti, these are regular skills, right? Why am I even talking about it? But through the audits, I've realized that the basic is what was missing. Forget creativity and innovation, that is far away. I'm just saying the core, the foundation has to be now based on trust. You stop teaching, you'll become a friend, you'll become a mentor, you laugh with your kid. This is an example. I must mention this because it's fun. So I watched this kid in a classroom audit. This teacher said, so, XYZ, tell me about your perspective about this. What is the author thinking? The kid hadn't done anything. Okay, and he was put in a breakaway room, and I know because the kid had basically switched off his video, and I don't know what he was doing, but he was clearly not in conversation. He's only heard Gregory's name because Gregory is leading the discussion. So with the teacher, he's saying, actually, what would be a good thing would be to get an interesting perspective from Gregory, because he was able to curate all the content beautifully. I might just ramble on and waste your time. Why don't you get him in? She has burst out laughing because she said, I love the way you defended yourself, and I know you haven't done it. And I feel that way, both the student and the teacher laughed it off. She actually got him to read it. I loved her attitude. Read it then and there because he's smart. Clearly, he can defend himself and answer in 10 minutes. So she didn't embarrass him. She did not reprimand him. She had a conversation. She laughed. And I think for that kid, he just needed, a bit of steam off. That's it. Now, how do you change this, Preeti? Can you imagine our traditional teachers? I was just thinking of my math teacher. God bless his soul. He would never be able to do this. But that was 30 years ago. I mean, don't you think teachers need to evolve with these kids? And these kids are way smarter. I mean, I'm not even going to get you into saying how they freeze their frame and pretend like they're there, or they'll get their moms to sign in and say, today we have a bandwidth problem. I love how lawyer like all the children have become. I mean, if there's one industry that's going to prosper from this, is these kids getting into law. But I think pretty changing the dynamics of how we teach. I'm not going to, that's very boring. I'm just saying become a friend. Try and see where you need to push and pull. You need to be alert. When you have to run the riot act, you will. When you have to put down essential agreements, you will. But give children that space, also depending on the age group. Stop patronizing them. I think that's what they've asked for. Treat us like individuals, and I think we'll be in partnership then. And kids are talking like that.
Right. I wish all the BS would follow this, right? I mean, this becomes the curriculum for all the teacher training that has to happen. I remember a few years ago, I had presented a paper on action research in the education industry about how teachers should be doing more research, right? And in fact, it's non existent when you look at the Indian education industry, again, industry, right? Um, there is nothing that a teacher writes down in reflection. You're right in terms of her doing research about when starting off the day, thinking about her lesson plans, etc. But there's also no reflection happening on the teacher's side, and I think that will close the loop. If she has started off by researching about what should be done in the classroom, she should also reflect at it at the end of the day, and that's how she closes that loop, and she knows what she needs to read next, or he knows what he needs to read next. So
but Preeti, but then that brings it down honestly to the leadership. Then that leadership needs to be inculcating a culture of creation, reflection, design thinking. Go back to the drawing board, think about it. Also giving your teachers a bit of freedom. But if that leadership is all about, why didn't you put this, why didn't you put this was supposed to be submitted, you've made it mechanical. When
Right.
you put in mechanics into it, you take away the creativity. And I firmly believe it's the leadership that then percolates how the teachers. So very well-meaning people also give up, saying she doesn't even care, that I've thought about it, I've rethought. She just wants to see whether it's done, and that's not a good sign. That's not professionalism.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Right. So the other thing I like what you said is about the expertise that the teacher has in terms of understanding where the child is, becoming a friend, becoming a mentor. I wanted to tell you that at Tapas, our teachers are experts in the child. When I say that, they are not subject matter experts. Their expertise is the
Oh wow.
child. And then they move up along with the child each year. So they don't have different teachers for math and science and physics and
Wow.
whatnot, but they have one teacher who's going to learn with them, and they're going to move up along with them. So imagine by the third year the teacher knows everything about this child. I mean, it's just such a joy to see that in action, and to see how the child will feel welcomed, will have the trust, and all the benefits of having the teacher move along with them. Of course, it could have some
And
cons.
without the child talking, also the teacher senses the pulse. Okay, this day, today I'm not going to reprimand this child because today this child is already broken. These are soft, these are so crucial. I mean, we talk about social emotional learning as this buzzword. That's the basis of child psychology. I mean, that's the basis of a mother loving a child. It's unconditional, but you've also grown with the child. It's not like you knew how your child's journey would evolve, right? You watch, you see, you observe. I love the concept of a teacher moving with the child. I mean, this used to happen in my mom's time. I went to the same school, and I know how much it has helped her. She and I are very different individuals. She was the naughty one. I was the geek.
Okay.
So but she was the just about 35. I could not even think that I could only get a 30. I mean, mine was the 90s. So but she's learned so many skills thanks to the teacher. So great. I mean, credit to you, Preeti. This is brilliant.
Super.
I'd love to emulate this model somewhere else.
Yeah. And I think keeping this group size smaller is going to allow us to do that, and that's what consciously we are practicing. And the third thing you said about gamification, right? So I believe that the way forward is experiential learning, and this word has featured again and again in the national education policy. And so, a couple of words that excite me about the policy. First is that the word play has come in a national policy document, so I was so excited about it. Second is about multidisciplinary learning, and third is experiential learning. So, these three things at a policy level, they've got it right. So, my question to you is, how can we ensure that this is implemented in the schools going forward? And what do you think are going to be the top three challenges in implementing these buzzwords, so called buzzwords, in our schools going forward?
So, the policy document has a lot of interesting ideas which have been reflected from a lot of the international, curriculums. This is what the International Baccalaureate or the Cambridge have been talking about forever. And it's always linked to assessments. So Preeti, for me, it's great to teach with transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary. I'll get to the terminology a bit later, but the first point is it's great to do all this, but then our assessments also have to feature that. So for me, the challenge is going to be for the national curriculum in particular, because if that continues to be, question, answer, and leaves out the creativity, you're again McDonaldizing it. So this approach will lead to frustration for the kid because there's so much in there, there's so much the child has, but the outcome eventually is that, and you're being graded for those questions. You're not being graded for your creativity. So somewhere I feel that needs to also be uh, addressed. And I think the academic boards should look at it. I mean, everything, though you've looked at the international curriculums, you might as well look at assessments and big onus on national curriculum. I know CBSE is off the mark already. Actually, CBSE was the first one who came out with their primary and secondary syllabus to try and match it to the NEP. So it's work, but I still see that as a challenge because unless the assessment is corrected, this will not work out. This will just then be, just let them just play for half an hour and, give them some blocks and some art and, that's fine. It has to be structured. You have to have that STEAM education. You have to talk about it as problem solving, like we started off the conversation, not about content delivery. And when you are addressing a problem, you're linking all subject areas to it. It's going to lead to more hands-on learning. So one assessment should be what I feel is going to be a big challenge, Preeti, is what the national education policy has spoken about: teacher education, teacher recruitment, and then teacher skilling. These three have to go. But Preeti, there are too many smaller entities that exist. I mean, no disrespect to anyone, but somewhere there has to be an accreditation to some sort of regulatory body that is certifying who is training the teachers as well, because this will get lost in translation very easily. People will then get tempted to do it cheaper, and when you do it cheaper, it is peripheral, it's not deeper learning. And I see that as a big problem. We've seen that previously as well. When there were 50 hours for professional training, we know what those 50 hours landed up being. Not really skilling, just to put those workshops in. So I worry that we'll take shortcuts to try and get it done in the time and the budget that we have, and that I see as a big thing. I think teacher training continues to be the least remunerated industry, and more importantly, part of the industry. And as far as school budgets are concerned, it's the lowest in the pecking order. So unless that changes, you're not going to get quality educators to pass on the knowledge, and you're never going to then be able to live up to quality benchmarks. So this whole vision document remains a vision document because it's all on the face. And lastly, I think we're going to have to rethink about the kind of content that is being expected out of the child to learn. Okay, and up to grade 7, I still feel principals are in a position to talk about negotiables and non-negotiables. I mean, non-negotiables are ones that lead to scaffolding. I mean, without understanding basic principles of pre-math and math, I cannot take on quadratic and I cannot get on to linear equations. So those are non-negotiables. But do we have to do everything at grade 2? Do we have to do everything at grade 3 because that school is doing it and that school is doing it, and because parents come and show me question papers from this school and that school? I think we need to take a few more risks for the sake of our children. And I'm not sure. The leadership is at the moment, so progressive. They're restrained by the managements, they're restrained by board expectations and parent expectations. So I see, again, people taking the traditional path and playing it safe. You can't play it safe. You've got to get out of that box and stand and defend what you believe in and what you think is right. Plus, every year, Preeti, the children change. I mean, you've got to be modifying your curriculum, and I cannot for the life of me understand how something that was taught last year continues to be taught this year. But your cohort of children have changed, their levels have changed. Where is the pre-assessment? So, Preeti, I see certain implementable problems. I'm not saying that there are no solutions to it. I just feel managements need to be progressive, put a bit more money and a price on teacher training, invest in that. Don't think your teachers will run away if you skill them. If they run away, find someone else who'll stay with you, or then do a better job for retaining them. So, this argument that no, we'll spend and they'll go away, we need to get out of those things. But if we've got to grow as an organization or as a country and we have to do good things, you've got to put take some risks, and you've got to start thinking with more confidence. And for the sake of that child, he cannot be doing what he's doing currently, at least in the national curriculum schools.
Absolutely. I love what you said. I love what you said about if you train them and they leave. I think this is a forward I've read. What if they don't? What if you don't train them and they stay, right? That's the bigger problem to have. So you're right. I think, and in terms of training, I think that there has to be a public partnership with the private so that the quality gets, it's not retained by the elite few and it kind of gets spread all across. So there is a scope for a lot of public-private partnerships, especially when it comes to training. So I hope the boards will utilize that, especially the state boards and the government-run schools are going to utilize the vast group of private schools who can afford this kind of training. And right, like you said, training has to be at the top of the pecking order. And I cannot stress enough on how much the teachers require hand holding, especially in a time like this. It's not just the VUCA world that they are operating in today, but it's also the NEP that is getting implemented. So I think it's a double whammy for when it comes to teachers. They need all the support that they can get.
And Preeti, just, I mean, I'm being a bit compassionate to those teachers who've told me, but I've taught like this for 17 years, Fatima, and I've delivered.
Right.
And my kids have done well, and someone's in MIT and someone's in Stanford. And I have to tell her, ma'am, but that happened 20 years ago. Your MIT and all, and they were genuinely intelligent children who had an innate. I'm more worried about the happy-go-lucky and, I'm not even worried about the ones who need support because they'll get special educators to help, or the bright ones will find their way. There's this nice big happy-go-lucky bunch who don't know any better, don't care any better, but need an inspiration. But ma'am, if you constantly give them a passage and you're asking them subject, predicate, now to point the pronouns, I am bored after 45 minutes because I said I can't do this anymore. Can you not make it fun? Can you not just get them to write something and circle their own pronouns and give it to you? Why are you doing this over 5 periods? It, she took a step back and she said, young lady, I'm older than you. I've had more years of experience than you. So I said, but ma'am, I might just be part of that future that you want to also be a part of. But it's this dialogue. So I
Right.
said, and she said, show it to me. And I took class and the kids were jumping and, we used a Kahoot. And then suddenly she said, okay, I want to learn this now. Because she realized the reactive nature of children. She got it done. We got it done in 45 minutes. She had taken 3 periods for it. So, there was time lost. And I said, you could have read to them because I know your literature is the weakest one. But you know what? This requires time, effort. Your leadership needs to be strong on it. You also then need quality trainers. Like I said, this is not the job. This is not a cut and paste. Preeti, there's enough online. You Google, you can find anything and put it together a presentation. Can you break it down in their lesson plan? Like you would, because you run tapas, you know what you're doing. So I'm a bit worried about who's going to train. I'm actually very worried.
Yes, that's a big conversation that we should have about who are the trainers, are they good enough, and are they really getting the right message out there? So uh, that's great. So thank you so much for that. And I know that we have a lot of questions that we had written down, but this conversation is so interesting. I just couldn't stop you in between, Sam. Um, so with ACE that you have started, the Agarkar Center for Excellence, and there's a focus on sports, right? So I'd like to ask your view that typically sports is considered as a hobby, and it's something that people say, okay, for staying fit, I'm going to play sports. But apart from this obvious physical benefit, what are some other benefits of playing sports? I mean, I know this is close to your heart, so
Yeah. And Preeti, I'm going to start off by also saying that the national education policy has emphasized an entire section on co-curriculars. It's not just sport; it's creative arts, it's performing arts, like theater, etc., which is what they call alternative, but very crucial skills. And if I can quote, the director of economics, Minosh Shafiq, I follow her a lot, and one of the things she simply says is anything that will be can be replicated will be automated. So now think, educators, what are you going to do? And that's when all these skilled co-curriculars come into play. Your creative arts, performing arts, and sport is a big part of it. What's exciting is with the pandemic, with the national education policy, there's already a discussion on actually certifying children at the end of grade 10 who want to specialize in sport. That means for once in our country, our cricket loving country, we are thinking about sport as an actual career.
Right.
This is happening in Australia. This is happening in South Africa. This is happening in England. Do you know Adele actually went to a music school that only specialized in music, but she has a GCSE as well?
Okay.
So what happens is they have these specialized schools that allow a child to pursue the passion. Now, putting into context of just mainstream schools where there's no specialization, sport is not just physical. Well, the pandemic has taught all of us that physical fitness is non-negotiable. Again, negotiable, non-negotiable. Whatever age group you are in, you can only battle the health crisis if you are physically fit. So that's the obvious one, right? Not everyone will go on to represent the country, but there are enough leagues today that are emerging that you can actually think of it as a lucrative career. And if I can actually tell parents that if I look at the employment data that has come out of in the last 3 months, the jobs that are available, be it sports management, media in sports, social marketing with sports, etc. Uh, Lots of careers. I mean, you still have to be a sportsman to be able to understand any of that. Starting salaries, very competitive, or along the lines of an MBA. So, these are careers that are now monetized as well. So before it was only if I'm good at playing, I can, make it a career. But now it's about so many other avenues related to sport. More than that, if we talk about cognitive development, your ability to think, analyze, evaluate, figure things out. That's a big part of computational thinking. That's really what industry wants. They want thinkers, right? They want people who can do this independently. Sport is one big platform for that. In fact, I've just written an article for Deccan Herald on Deccan Chronicle, sorry, for the same, which is basically talking about how sport involves either individual or team sports, involves decision making, time management, discipline, commitment. You throw a tantrum, you're off the field. It involves communication skills because at any point of time you're dealing with different abilities. It involves a lot of self initiation. When I say discipline, no one can push you. It's only you who can push yourself. So these are important life skills that sports brings to you. Every time a parent complains to me that my son doesn't listen, I said, you know what? Let him play a sport. Let him train under someone. You see how they're following instructions beautifully because there's no frill to it. There's no pampering. This is it. You got to do it if you want to do it. No one's forcing you to it. And they adapt so beautifully. Why are they getting up at 5 in the morning and going for football? Why don't they get up at 5 in the morning and want to go to school? So you've got to understand sport creates a lot of opportunities. More than that, I am still very concerned that in our country, we are the next in line for the most obese children in the world by 2030. That's the statistic out there. Also, children with learning difficulties will find sports orientation helps them. Therapists have recommended it. Quite frankly, we're all extremely fatigued, extremely stressed. We're housebound. There's been no social contact. If there are avenues for fitness, it's also got to do with mental health and conditioning. You will be able to regulate those emotions. So, in that sense, for me, sport is school in itself. And I've just told you that it's going to be a monetized career, much more than your traditional careers. And anything that can be duplicated will be automated. So your traditional careers are going to be automated. So which are the ones that are going to actually then be challenging are the ones that have specialization. Sport is one of them. So parents, I think you need to think about sport as recreation for sure. But if your child shows a talent, is inclined, please don't give it up on the years that matter, which is ninth and 10th. Incidentally, Preeti, a very dear friend, a sportsman's wife, her son and mine are the same age. She said, he's very good with cricket. What about yours? I said, no, no, he decided to become a businessman, not a cricketer. So she said, no, I'm not sure. Now it's board exams. I said, a cricketer's wife talking like that. So she said, no, but again, South Indian couple. She said, yeah, but there is pressure, right? I mean, eventually you don't know whether he's going to make it or not, but at least marks help. So I said, if we start thinking along those lines, we'll never be able to take risks ourselves. We'll never have the Virat Kohlis of the world because we haven't allowed them to express themselves. So I'm going to say, parents, be brave. And I always tell my in-laws, I love the fact that you didn't want Ajit to be an engineer. You encouraged him to be a cricketer, and you allowed him to. So, and he always talks about sport as being his only life lesson. So maybe all the CEOs of are successful. If you trace their journey, Preeti, they're all sportsmen. The top CEOs that have emerged from the pandemic, they've had sport in some form that has been instrumental in their decision making ability as well. So I think we need to think about sport as education, not as a physical engagement.
Absolutely. So I remember my school days. I played every sport that there was. I was the
Wow.
vice captain basketball team, captain of my hockey team. I played table tennis. I played, and I represented a basketball team at the state level. So, and I believe I personally feel more equipped today as a leader than I would have otherwise. Or I see my friends from school. I believe the lessons that these sports have taught me are so valuable for me in today's life. I also
Preeti, also what happens is now that the world is opening up, you have all these football leagues, badminton leagues, hockey leagues, which are going outside the country. So these young kids are getting exposed to travel and go, and compete. So I know my nephew is very, very good with football, and he wanted to pursue it professionally, but because of injury, he didn't. And he spent a month in Barcelona, and he said, Gigi, what it's taught me is that I had no idea what that guy was speaking to me. When we were actually arguing about a foul, but it's just you pick up, you understand, and you learn to cope, and you find a way to communicate to say, guy, back off. I wasn't trying to foul you. He said it just taught me, and he's a very shy kid. It just taught me that you can be confident, but it's the exposure. Preeti, you are blessed to be able to play all the sports. I was one of them in the books. My nose, like sports day used to come, and I always had a stomach upset because I was never good. But the school never encouraged never good kids. Now, had I been taken into a chess, so what if I was not good at outdoor? Maybe I was, involve me in indoor. Think about sport not just being a physical outdoor thing. There are so many indoor sports. And today, esports is also one of the big industries. So, pretty the sheer confidence the exposure brings is what parents forget. So when people say, my kid is shy, doesn't open up, watch them. You'll see how amazing they are when they're left alone and when no one is judging them.
right. So it's about sports not being just about going outdoors and playing there, right? So it's also about how it's part of our daily life. And so I Tapas again, I mean, I'm so proud that it's curricular. It's not co-curricular, extracurricular. It's curricular. So if I have to say, for example, teach the concept of mean, median, mode, I get the children out on the playground. get them to line up as per their date of birth or their age, height, whatever, line up, and then talk about mean, median, mode. Where is the mean, where's the mode, how are we doing it? So get them out on a field and do it. So it's really internalizing these concepts without having to um, without having to sit in front of the board and or of AV room, and understanding it with my body. So sports can take up many shapes. The other thing you mentioned was about
Even math skills like IPL, run rates, etc. Percentages, kids hate when you give them those word problems. You get them to figure out the run rate, you get them to figure out probability, you get them to figure out. It happens so seamlessly.
yes,
Why do we make it? I don't know why Tom and Jerry have to have a percentage. Why can't it just be a cricket match or a
yeah,
football match? Yeah,
exactly.
sorry, go ahead.
So the other thing about this generation, I feel, is that when you spoke of obesity, I think the other big complication I see is that their proprioceptive sense and their vestibular senses are being affected terribly because they are sitting very often. And as you know, sitting is the new smoking. Obviously, it's causing a lot more damage to our bodies than anything else. So at Tapas, we have consciously made sure that children are not spending too much time in the classroom and they're out and about playing a lot more. And we're very conscious that their vestibular and proprioceptive senses have to be developed because that's the critical age when it cannot be missed out on. So I'm excited to see how the sports education will pan out, and that's a
Hmm.
conversation that we will have lot more during the next few years.
Sure.
Um, so the final question is that this year we've unfortunately been indoors quite a lot, and we've not had the
Hmm.
opportunities to play team sports, especially as much as previously. So, do you think this will have any long-term impact? Do you think that coming out of the pandemic, we should do more of it? What is your recommendation?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we talk about as educators, we are going to have to think about the children and their mental health, their I call it the transition phase, where we're going to have to ease them into it. It cannot be what it was pre-pandemic. You can't push them in because they haven't had that physical interface. Some of them may be meeting in smaller cohorts, but as as a team sport, etc., it takes time. I'm just going to give you an example of when the IPL happened, and basically cricket is the first thing that really kick started. I mean, whether it was in England and then in Dubai when the teams came in, with the bio bubbles where they have to quarantine for 14 days and then go on to practice, it does take a bit of time. So we're going to see a little bit of transitioning. We're going to have to be a little more patient. But I think the individual fitness levels, children have been practicing, they've been using staircases or cycling or doing it individually. So their fitness levels, Preeti, have actually been pretty good. Now it's all coming together and working out the dynamics of, how we fit in different roles as a team. Therefore, a lot more emphasis on match playing, team, games, team bonding, and that is not only for mental health because it's a little unfamiliar suddenly when you're meeting your 30 kids. I mean, you haven't had any interface for so long. So imagine, well, my reaction, when I met a few people during that little lockdown time that we had, was also a case of going back a bit and working out, how do I do this? So imagine a child, but children are a lot more resilient than we are. We carry a lot more reservation than they do. So planned simulations, planned, team building exercises, planned activities solely focused on that. If academics can follow, that's great. But I think this is very important to bring their normalcy back, and it cannot just happen. You can't just say now they're expected to start talking. It is unfamiliar. You're still worried. So you're going to have to plan it in safe bubbles and smaller cohorts and ease them into it. A period of transition. Like I said, I'm okay to do two less math concepts, but this is critical. This is the bonding that they need.
Super. I think that's because understanding how to bring children back in and to use sports as a means of giving them the opportunity to settle in. That's a great takeaway for me. So thank you so much. So it's been a
And also remember, Preeti, sport when played outdoor is safer than getting them in back into the classrooms with our ventilation, etc. So a lot of the scientists, researchers have suggested anything that you do outdoors, even if learning can happen outdoors. And Tapas is anyway doing that, right? You're bringing in math in that space. But what I'm trying to say is that you'll have to structure you all of us will have to structure activities and actually create them as lesson plans, planned team building exercises. I think that should be the goal for them, at least for 3 months when we transition them back into the physical world.
So another interesting thing about Tapas, I wanted to let you know that each of our environments or the classrooms have a bit of an indoor and an outdoor. So each space opens up a little bit. So 30% of that classroom space is outdoors. So the ventilation is fantastic. Children can choose to sit in the sun and work, or they can choose to sit inside and work. So it's exciting to be having that space, especially because, like you said, it's so much safer. And I think we are an indoor generation, and we are living in so much of pollution, our own created pollution, right? So, since we are indoors, so I think we are trying to solve all those problems, because the biggest chunk of time the child is spending away from home is at school, and so that's what we've created at Tapas. So just excited that I can share that with you.
That's amazing.
So, Fatima, I know we can go on for hours. We've already spoken for more than an hour now, and I'm sure that
really?
yes, the time just flew, and I'm like so happy that we could get this insight from you. I'm sure that this will be very well received. Thank you so much for spending time with us, giving us your insights. We would love to have you connect with you more often to just have these conversations that are insightful, and yet it leaves a question in the listeners' minds about how can I be better. So thank you for being inspiring. Thank you for coming on this show. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Preeti. Like I said, it's always a pleasure to be in conversation with you. We have, sorry, always a pleasure to be in conversation with you. We have plenty in common, and I'm going to take you up on the offer of having more conversations.
I'd love
Thank
that.
you.
Great day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.